morning, everybody. Today we are going to talk about the Ayurvedic concept and contemporary concepts related to Vyadhi-kshamatva as well as related to immunity. Okay. So Vyadhi-kshamatva is a very, very common word. Most of us know about it. By means of Vyadhi-kshamatva, what we understand? We understand it as a resistance from diseases. It's the inherent capacity of a person to resist the diseases. This is what is being understood by the word Vyadhi-kshamatva. And most of the times we take it in parallel to the immunity, to the concept of immunity of the modern medicine. When we talk about Vyadhi-kshamatva, immediately what comes in our mind is the word immunity, which is there in the modern medicine. So let us examine what this Vyadhi-kshamatva is. As the word implies, as the the literal meaning of the Vyadhi-kshamatva is, we see that Vyadhi-kshamatva is composed of two words. One is Vyadhi and another is the kshamatva, and it literally means that capacity of an individual to resist diseases. As I told you that most often Vyadhi-kshamatva is considered synonymous to immunity. Actually, Ayurvedic concept of Vyadhi-kshamatva is much wider and broader than the concept of immunity in contemporary science. Well, to know more clearly what the Vyadhi-kshamatva is, let us understand what is Vyadhi. If we look at the generic definition of the Vyadhi, it is said that vividham dukham adadhati iti Vyadhi, or tat 𝑑ukh-संयोगा Vyadhi-ः उच्यते. That means wherever there is a misery, it is being termed as Vyadhi. See the next definition, which is basically the process definition of the Vyadhi, that simply says that how the Vyadhi originates, or what is the pathogenesis of the Vyadhi. And it specifies that 𝘉𝑢𝑗 Vyadhi. That means the Vyadhi generates when there is a combination of, or there is a interaction between dosh and dosha in the form of a samurchana. And the third definition of the Vyadhi is a structural definition, which says that a combination of various signs and symptoms, a group of various signs and symptoms, is termed as Vyadhi. So this is, you see that how dynamic the definition of Vyadhi is. It can be defined in various ways. Now the most important thing is this, that from where the Vyadhi originates, from where actually the Vyadhi comes. So we know from Ayurvedic perspective that Vyadhi comes from two sources basically. One is the indigenous source, it comes from within the body, and another is the exogenous source. That means the Vyadhi is coming from outside the body. This indigenous source, or it is explained as that Nij Vyadhi is the Sharir Dosh Samutta. It is coming up from the dosha which are lying inside the body itself. This is a depiction of the internal Vyadhi. The Vyadhi is coming from inside. The factors which are inside the body, Vyadhi is generated through those factors. And exogenous are, Ayurveda very specifically defines them, that these are the bhutajanya, or the vish, or vayu, or sampahara. These are basically the causatives of the exogenous diseases, the diseases which are coming through the exogenous routes. Okay. Now, when we talk about immunity against the disease, most of the times we see or we notify it for the diseases which are coming from the exogenous routes. most of the times, it is the protection of the body from the diseases or from the causes of the diseases which are coming from outside of the body. This is what we call immunity, or this is we generally depict, or this is what we generally understand by Vyadhi-kshamatva. So putting a protective buffering between individual and external cause of disease, we consider it as immunity against the disease, or we consider it as Vyadhi-kshamatva. Now the question lies that what happens with the diseases which are generating through the internal causes? Do we have any kind of Vyadhi-kshamatva? Do we have any kind of immunity, any kind of resistance process within the body which resists us from the diseases which are generating for the causes which are also lying within us? Do we have something like this? So we need to understand this, that is this a reality, that we have a protective mechanism of our body which protects us from the internal diseases or the diseases which are being caused by internal reasons, or it's simply a myth. Ayurveda proposes that yes, we have a defensive mechanism for the diseases which are generating by the internal causes as well. So it is for this reason our body has the defense mechanism for the 𝐴𝐴𝐷𝑗 diseases, which we call as innate immunity and adaptive immunity, as well as for the 𝐛𝐩 diseases, or the diseases which is being caused by internal reasons. We have certain mechanisms to protect our body from those diseases as well. What are these mechanisms? How do we protect ourselves from the diseases which are coming from the sources of the body from within? So let us examine how the body responds to the internal stimulus. So those who have studied biology well, they might be understanding it very clearly that body responds to the internal stimuli in two ways. One is the positive feedback mechanism and another is the negative feedback mechanism. Positive feedback mechanism implies to increase the processing so that whatever is happening, it happens with more intensity and it continues to happen. And negative feedback mechanism is to counteract the process which is happening. So only these kind of two mechanisms are implied in the body in response to the internal stimuli which are being generated. So positive feedback mechanism is that it promotes some reaction to happen faster. Whatever reaction is happening in your body, this positive feedback mechanism promotes it to happen faster till the goal is achieved. And the negative feedback mechanism is to prevent or retard the reaction from happening, or it counterbalances it. Let us examine what the positive feedback mechanism is. Positive feedback mechanism is when there is a stimulus, it stimulates, it promotes the effect, and in turn the effect again promotes the stimulus. So stimulus promotes the effect and effect promotes the stimulus, and that way this reaction goes on, it carries on. So this is the positive feedback mechanism. If you look at the physiological processes within your body, you will see that all evacuative processes which are governed by Vata are basically nothing but are an clear example of the positive feedback mechanism. Once this process begins, the process of evacuation which is governed by Vata begins, it keeps on mounting until the evacuation takes place completely. The clear examples of these mechanisms are childbirth, defecation, breathing, vomiting, urination, sneezing, yawning. And you see that these processes, once these processes begin, once the process of the childbirth begins, once the process of the defecation begins, or once breathing begins, this cannot be stopped, or this keeps on mounting until the process is over. Until the target, or until the objective which was lying behind this, the initiation of this process is achieved. So this keeps on mounting until the process is over. So this is the positive feedback mechanism. And the body holds lot of normal physiological functions which are being governed by this mechanism. So how do positive feedback mechanism prevents indigenous diseases? Okay, see what are the functions of the Vata, the Prakrit Vata functions. This is how the chart explains about the functions of the normal Vata. And you see that out of these all functions which are depicted or which are mentioned by the chart here, Uchvas and Nishvas, that is breathing practices or breathing activity, and Moksha. Moksha means elimination of all sort of body waste, is being governed by Vata. It's the normal function of the Vata. So these processes are basically, which we see that these are the normal functions of the Vata. They are basically the processes which are reflex initiated, and they help maintaining the body homeostasis and thereby preventing the diseases which may occur due to the accumulation of waste. Moksha is one very, very important function of Vata which helps us eliminating the body waste. So by the normal functioning of this positive feedback mechanism, what happens? It helps the body preventing the diseases which may occur if this is not normally functioning. If it is not normally functioning, what it will cause? It will cause the accumulation of the waste. So this is one defense mechanism which the body is applying to prevent the diseases, prevent the body from occurrence of the diseases which may be caused by accumulation of the waste. And this accumulation of the waste would simply be the outcome of some internal causes. It has nothing to do with the external causes of the disease. This is only because of certain internal causes which might be causing the accumulation of the waste. So by means of this Prakrit Vata, or by means of this positive feedback mechanism, the body is defended against these indigenous causes of the diseases. Charak further explains it in the form of the non-suppressible urges. This is why it is being told that these urges which are basically defined as the normal function of the Vata should never be suppressed. These urges are the first natural defense mechanism. By means of these urges only, the body is being told to eliminate the waste which is being accumulated inside the body. So these urges primarily act as the first natural defense mechanism of the body against development of indigenous diseases, which may happen, which may occur because of the accumulation of the waste. Now let us look at what negative feedback mechanism is. As we told earlier, negative feedback mechanism is basically the counterproductive, or basically it is counteracting to the process. Whatever is happening, the body intends to reduce its intensity or to stop that process. So it employs the counteracting strategies to stop or revert the process, and at the same time it increases the production if the level is decreased. If there is certain kind of decrease in the level, the body intends to increase its production, and if it is increased, it tries to decrease its production. So in both ways it manages in the opposite way. If it is increased, the body tries to decrease it. If it is decreased, the body tries to increase it. So this is the negative feedback mechanism. One simple example of the negative feedback mechanism is that if the body temperature decreases, what you experience shivering. And by means of the shivering, what happens? The body temperature increases and comes to the normal. And on the contrary, if the body temperature increases, what the body experiences? Body experiences some cooling mechanism which is activated through the sweating. And by means of the sweating, again, the body temperature decreases. So this is how, by means of negative feedback mechanism, to counter what is happening already in the body, if there is excess of the heat, the body would be initiating the process which is going to reduce the heat. If the body is cold, the body is trying to initiate the mechanism which is going to increase the temperature. So this is negative feedback mechanism, and the ultimate objective of negative feedback mechanism is to maintain the optimal functional conditions, or to maintain the homeostasis rather. So defense from Nij Vyadhi comes from two ways. One is from the positive feedback mechanism, which gives us for supporting the important needs of the body during urgent conditions, and it helps in urgently eliminating the bio waste. And second comes from the negative feedback mechanism, which maintains an optimal level of functioning by ensuring desired level of substrates. And if for any reason the level misbalances, the body immediately brings it back to normal. Now, one more very important thing, one more very important barrier, or one more defense activity, or the Vyadhi-kshamatva, or defensive resistance activity of the body against the diseases which are being caused by the internal reasons, is the occurrence of the preclinical and clinical features. This would be very interesting to understand that a disease passes through various steps in our body. The diseases which are being caused by the internal reasons are passing through various stages like Sanchay, Prakop, Prasar, Asthan, Sanchray, Vyakti and Bhed. And we know that at each of these stages, every of these stages of the pathogenesis, some signs and symptoms are being produced. And these signs and symptoms are produced on the basis of the doshic imbalances which are dominating at that particular position or that particular stage. We can call them as the different stages of a disease or different stages of a preclinical status. So such clinical symptoms are often the first telltale of the upcoming disease and are also considered as the first defense against the upcoming disease. How they are going to be the first defense against the upcoming disease? Such symptoms often allow a person to know clearly what should be done to manage the disease. I mean, they themselves are telling the person who is suffering with those symptoms that what should be done next. For example, take a clear example, loss of appetite comes as a prodromal feature of Jwara. When you have Jwara, the first symptom which is going to be apparent on the person is loss of appetite, or aruchi. And Langhan comes as the natural treatment principle for Jwara, which comes naturally as a result of the loss of appetite. When you have loss of appetite, what happens? You stop eating food. So we see that Langhan comes as the first treatment principle of the Jwara itself. And this comes naturally when you have loss of appetite. So that simply says that by producing the symptom of loss of appetite, the body itself prepares to deal with the upcoming pathogenesis by initiating the process of the Langhana. Unfortunately, what happens in the current days, we disregard these natural clues which are eventually the measures of body's internal defense against a disease. The body itself gives you the signs, and body itself prepares you for the management of the disease But somehow what happens, we keep on ignoring those clues, those natural clues, which are basically the first mechanism of the body which defends you against the progress of the disease. What we do when we see that there is loss of appetite, instead of treating it in that way, we try to find the methods, or we try to find the medications which are going to increase the appetite. And that is contrary to the principle of the management of. For example, if we take the example of the 𝑗vara, that comes contrary to the principle of its management. So this is how we see that the body has a defense mechanism against the diseases which are being originated by internal causes as well. So now it is clear that when we talk about the Vyadhi-kshamatva, it is not only the Vyadhi-kshamatva or the resistance against the disease which is coming from the external sources, but it is also applicable for the diseases which are being generated from the internal causes. In our next lecture, we will be talking about that how the body is being defended from the diseases which are coming from the external sources. Thank you.